Senate Bill 1 is a new bill that was officially signed in Ohio by Governor Mike DeWine on March 28, 2025. The bill proposes many things, one of the main topics being bans to all DEI efforts in Ohio universities. We can look directly at what Senate Bill 1 proposes to get a full picture of what will change. Taken directly from Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 1 will prohibit all of the following: any orientation or training course regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, the continuation of existing diversity, equity, and inclusion offices or departments. It will also prohibit the establishment of any new institutional scholarships that use diversity, equity, and inclusion in any manner. Senate Bill 1 will systematically remove all the resources that students of color and students in minority groups need to attend higher education. They are destroying the methods of helping students within universities, as well as any funds that could give a disadvantaged student a chance at higher education. This provision favors the white majority in power at institutions and the predominantly white student body, while it disadvantages any minority group and women. How exactly does removing programs that help even the playing field for the disadvantaged make things more fair? Senate Bill 1 supporters claim that treating students differently on the basis of race to achieve nebulous goals such as diversity, racial balancing, social justice, or equity is illegal. They would prefer equality to equity. The difference between these words is important to understand. Equality means treating everyone the same, while equity means treating people fairly, recognizing that they may have different needs. This argument about unfair treatment denies and removes the progress made in creating equitable education that has been historically inaccessible or less accessible to minoritized populations. It conveniently forgets the evidence that race, gender identity, sexuality, ability, and socioeconomic status continue to determine students' access and experience of higher education. It denies the fact that students do not enter the classroom on equal footing. The truth about DEI programs is that they level the playing field by unfairly treating some students differently than others because they need that help to stand on their own, something many of us take for granted. A supporter of this bill, State Representative Josh Williams, believes that the purpose of education is to prepare students for the workforce, and this doesn't include the topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. As such, he believes that public universities should be prohibited from requiring students to participate in DEI classes and programs, saying, "We need to remove the indoctrination." To that I say this: if attending a program on how to treat others with fairness and equity is considered indoctrination, then I don't want to imagine the world that Williams wants us to live in. Also, I would argue that diversity is important in the workplace and the need for it is always there. We should value diversity not only because it offers a variety of opinions and perspectives that leads to more creative problem solving and innovation, but because it creates an equitable and just system that provides equal access to opportunities and acknowledges each of us as human beings deserving of dignity. This is what DEI programs provide. I had the opportunity to interview my good friend Aaron Chavez on his thoughts. Let us begin the interview. Would you like to please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Aaron Chavez. I'm a recent graduate of Miami University with a degree in liberal studies. And I am, what else? I currently work as an admissions officer at Mercy College. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Um, so you are the first one that told me to start researching this topic, and I thank you for that. What made you start kind of following this topic as it was going on?
So, regarding the topic of Senate Bill 1, right? Is that what we're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
So, this is something that has been critical in anyone that's interested in pursuing a career in higher education. As someone that's currently stepping into a role right now in higher education, it's important to be, cognizant of different laws and policies going on, especially things that can affect or potentially harm students, right? Because of the career in higher education being so student centered, right? The ideal is that it should be catered towards the students, not against in any way.
Hmm.
And navigating that can be hard because of the different conversations with administration and legislation. It becomes very obvious in this field that your job is political, that education as a discipline is political. It will never not be political. As someone who studied education, has been in the field of education, um, seeing firsthand how different laws can affect both positively and negatively,
Mm-hmm.
our students in higher education, even in K 12 and pre K. We look at laws that exist that had they not, or had they not been considered before, some of our students wouldn't have access to things like IEPs or disability accommodations, or really even knowing where to begin with diagnoses for students with learning disabilities, right? So that's kind of a long answer
No,
of
it's good. It's all good.
why it's kind of important to me and why
Mm-hmm.
I became familiarized with the topic, because we simply have to, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So you graduated winter 2024. So sad you're gone. But how was your time at Miami affected by the current DI programs that it has?
So as it stands, Miami University provided a lot of opportunities that were not made aware to me. Diversity was much like something a little controversial
Yeah.
in um, not just my hometown, but in school. Everyone assumed it meant one thing when really it's not as linear as people may think. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
quite abstract and incorporates many people. Miami also provided me a lot of education on how diversity and inclusion includes everybody, right? Not just demographics that people may seem that it targets. And for me, having different organizations like OSTEM Fuse, the CSDI as a whole, um, be such a space of affinity and camaraderie that's very needed to these students, you know.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, I've been very grateful to receive scholarships and being eligible for some programming offered by the Center for Student Diversity and Inclusion. So um, it is not just a free ticket, as some people may say, but it was a very beautiful experience to benefit from that, and I'm really sad to see that that will not be as available to forthcoming students.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, Senate Bill 1 is basically banning all efforts towards DEI and all scholarship funds that could go to disadvantaged students. What are your worries about the cutting of these programs, and how do you think it'll affect the future generations of students that need these programs?
So point blank, I'm just going to be honest. You're going to see students struggle. You're going to see stereotypes be perpetuated and exist more predominantly than ever. We're regressing
Hmm.
in society. Um, you're going to see students um, who were once first generation college students no longer get those opportunities or those funds or those resources because they're not in mind anymore, right? So you're basically perpetuating kids as a food chain, right? Where students who have the funds and capabilities and resources and education, or even live in an area where that's available, right?
Hmm.
Just off of that, they're going to be able to succeed. Some slowly but surely, not everyone at the same pace, but it's going to perpetuate poor smart kids will get nowhere, right? Um, and that sucks to say or hear, but it's just the truth is that like for students like me, that was our chance, right? We
Hmm.
were able to take advantage of people, looking for students who are disadvantaged by low income status or minority status or first generation status. You're going to see less students be included. And because of that, you're going to have higher education spheres be even more elitist and more reclusive than they have been,
Hmm.
right? It's going to be much more about status than it has been, recently. You're not going to see diversity. You're not going to get the mindsets, the wonderful, beautiful mindsets of people because you're not including them, right? Because it's not available for them. So it's really a lose lose situation that really
Yeah.
makes no sense. And it's unfortunate.
Okay. Final question. How should you think people should fight Senate Bill 1? I mean, for the people that like fundamentally oppose everything it's proposing, which I'm a part of that group, how do you think people should try to fight back?
So I think it starts in pillars, right? Or I should say dominoes. Um, One action or inaction leads to another.
Hmm.
So I really think, if the government and people do not care for these students, I think these students should should show resilience and silence of, all right, you say you don't need me, I'm not going to help. I'm not going to, you know, be affiliated with your school. I'm not going to recruit for your school. I'm not going to tell people, to come to this school
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't vouch for me. And we're seeing that with Miami University, for example, being so inclined to just go with it rather than fight it and understand the laws and rights that they have as an
Mm-hmm.
entity and as a federal institution, um, because of money, right? And that's all it boils down to is money. And it sucks, but we have to understand what we teach our students as an institution, about their liberties, and regardless of, partisanship or party, everyone fundamentally believes they have a right to their voice and speech,
Mm-hmm.
and a right to, combat the government, and not just or oppose government when they're overstepping or they're being too tyrannical. This is the time, right? So I think students should show opposition by, you know, starting with their money, starting with their resources, starting with their affiliation. I don't think this means to abandon the things that they helped start or nurture, right? So, if let's say a student started a multicultural org, right, that doesn't mean they have to abandon it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they can exist without leaning on the support of this institution that simply seems to not care about them. So I think students should show protest in that way. I think choosing other institutions or speaking out when uh, available and speaking up and not going with this norm that it's just the law or things like that. No, if you have something to say, I encourage students to say something because um, it their money and their time and their investment in their education should not come at the expense of being unwelcome. I think that's unfair.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you would like to say about this whole topic?
Yeah, I would encourage people to understand the context of history we're in, and it seems a little. I don't think our generation may take that seriously,
Mm-hmm.
but we're in such a pivotal time where it reflects what has happened almost 100 years ago, 80 years ago, even, in times of World War II, in times of civil unrest. We have to be able to look back and think about what we did during those moments because we're in one of them, right? So, and I think it starts with, it's not something I would encourage people to speak up about what they believe in, and also not be afraid to cut down things that may not seem socially, acceptable to do. So, it starts with little things, comments about, you know, like just incorrect statements. It doesn't mean you're soft or being woke. It just means you're like, dude, like come on, like
Mm-hmm.
like we need to retire. This is a joke and kind of take things serious. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because that's the time, right? And I know that with COVID and everything, we're used to having humor as a scapegoat or as some as a coping mechanism for the times we're in. We need to channel that energy into doing something, honestly. Um, and it starts with all of us. It starts with holding everyone accountable. I think if you're in your 20s and don't know how to vote or how to register to vote, you should be embarrassed about that. In full transparency, you're contributing to the economy. You're
Yeah.
contributing to many of governmental operations with existing, and having a social security number. You should know how to vote, and you should know what you're voting on, and understand taking time to really look at things like that and see how it affects more than just you. I think I'll leave it on that. Is think about remember your civil liberties and remember what time period you're in and what you want to look back and think about yourself as.
In the end, Senate Bill 1 removes our privilege to learn. It forces the censorship of political speech about controversial topics like climate change, racism, and sexism. It takes from minorities their right to a good education. There is much divide in the world, but in the end, we are all the same. It might seem childish, but people seem to forget the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. We teach it to our children, yet refuse to acknowledge it as adults. People seem so quick to separate into us versus them, and to hate others for simply being who they are. We need to be able to understand those around us. Senate Bill 1 removes any programs that would help to educate our next generation of students on how to treat others with the respect and kindness they inherently deserve. This bill is directly taking away our rights, implying that it can and will take away more. People need to care about how their education is being affected.